if there was one franchise that once had a ton of respect but has been abused so many times that it's not even funny, then it's definitely Star Wars. I know that it's definitely far from the only franchise that has been run down to the ground, and I would actually argue that Neon Genesis Evangelion has taken even more of a hit towards it over the years. But the reason I bring up Star Wars in particular is because Star Wars is literally one of the largest and most financially successful IPs in the entire world. Many people, including myself, have grown up watching all the 3 original films, and while these other movies weren't perfect, I also grew up with the prequel trilogy. The prequels certainly had their flaws, but even with all their issues, they were still nowhere near bad enough to kill this franchise, and I actually agree that out of the 3 films, I would argue that Revenge of the Sith was actually a good film, because despite having a couple of things holding it back from being a masterpiece, it admittingly does share a little bit of the same issues as the previous 2 prequel films. It did still fix a lot of the issues the previous 2 films had, and easily showed where the prequels had the most potential to be well written and powerful. Overall, the prequels were definitely a mixed bag, and they weren't particularly really that good overall, but they were at least definitely nowhere near as bad still as the Disney sequel trilogy. Because if there was one thing the prequels definitely got at least right over the sequels, of course, despite the admittingly bad material all the actors had to work with, and, questionable voice acting at times for sure, at least the prequels still certainly had a better story and actually feel together with the original trilogy a lot better than the sequels. The prequels may have had some execution issues, but they were still far superior to the sequel trilogy in the sense where they had a much better gripping storyline than the sequels, and that's because at least when directing the prequels, they at least had a much better idea that works as a concept. The story of Darth Vader is definitely a tragic storyline, and I think while they rushed Anakin's development in certain spots, they did a great job nailing the aspect of his character that throughout his life, he always lost everything he had. The fear of loss is the one way you could argue that makes Anakin Skywalker a compelling character, and from that perspective, you can at least understand him as a person. Like I said, I do think that while his acting admittingly wasn't always top quality and his performance could have been stronger in some cases, there was actually a good story in the prequels that they were at least trying to tell that just had, of course, some issues. With that in place, we now finally get to Rey, and one reason why the prequels, despite their flaws, are still a significantly better written movie trilogy, which is quite terrifying if you could believe that was somehow actually accomplished compared to the sequels, because at least Anakin was a much better protagonist than Rey. Of course, he wasn't perfect, but at least he had a character arc. Nobody could ever deny that the idea that they had for Anakin's character was easily way more compelling and deeper than any blank thing that they came up for Rey. The reason that confirms that is because unlike Anakin, who was written to at least try to be a compelling character in some ways with a great idea, Rey never had literally any idea to tell a story about to begin with. The thing that at least makes Anakin a better character, despite being nowhere near as compelling really as Luke Skywalker, was that Anakin at least had an arc for his character. At least they tried to develop out Anakin as a character. And I believe Revenge of the Sith easily did the best job out of the trilogy, showing that what was done correctly writing Anakin's story arc. Rey, on the other hand, is a blank slate of a character who served no purpose but just being the main character and a plot device to just move the story along. Rey's whole character feels so artificial and contrived that it actually makes the storytelling in the prequels somehow seem like it was competently structured by comparison. And no, I'm not even exaggerating when I say that. The bullshit that they pulled out of their ass for Rey's so-called quote-unquote character development literally boils down to always being Miss Mary Sue Goody Two-Shoes, who gets her plot armor by somehow mastering the Force in a matter of days, beating Luke Skywalker in combat somehow, and then discovering that she was somehow the granddaughter, and I'm actually not kidding with you, of Emperor Palpatine, who just randomly at some point had kids, let alone grandchildren. At least Anakin's development was actually a little bit subtle as to how he became Darth Vader by understanding the fears he went through. Rey, on the other hand, just feels like a character that's literally nothing and only exists to push a made-up story from point A to point B as someone's overpowered shonen waifu self-insert fanfiction toy. I would call her a bootleg Luke Skywalker, considering how her whole fucking backstory is really a complete ripoff of how Luke was taken away from his own father, let alone how The Force Awakens literally starts her character off as a loser on a conveniently placed desert planet like Tatooine. Totally not Tatooine, guys, by the way. But I think even comparing her to Luke Skywalker is an insult to Luke Skywalker, and Disney Star Wars doesn't deserve to even be considered to be in the same universe as Star Wars or compared anywhere near it. That's why today our lovely main topic is going to be the very unbelievable fact that they're trying to write and rise from hell into this world a new abortion project movie where it's actually a movie literally all about Rey as a character. By the way, before we continue, please like and subscribe for more awesome content. With that in place, let's get back to the video. In case you're wondering, yes, Disney for some reason just hasn't given up on shoving more of this toxic, dehydrated whale piss down our throats by continuing to milk Star Wars and write more fanfiction of Rey to have us swallow so they can make more money and literally put onion rings around their dick. Dude, I'm literally going to be 100% honest with you. I mean no hyperbole when I actually say that writing a film about sticking a hot glue gun up your asshole to seal it completely shut so your intestines explode inside your body when you have the runs and diarrhea would be a far more compelling and interesting idea and concept to write for your flaccid walrus cock of a movie than writing a film about Rey Skywalker, as if she actually even deserves that name too. Ugh. You could probably generate a whole list of script ideas playing with cat feces on ChatGPT, and that would be a whole better script for your dog shit movie than writing a film about a character that literally slammed the head of Star Wars into a huge blob of bean paste inside a giant water bowl. Literally, fuck this movie. Anyone with 2 brain cells that has seen The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and or Rise of Skywalker would immediately see a mile away that this movie is a huge red flag to stay away from. I can't imagine, even if they tried with all the best resources in the world, that they could pull off making this a good movie. And that's because the retcon that Rey is actually Palpatine's granddaughter makes absolutely no sense, even on a fundamental level. The time between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens isn't even long enough that such situations could even occur. How would it possibly make sense to write a film about Rey, whether it be about her past or her future, when there was no solid arc for her whole development as a person? Rey feels more like a robot than a human being, And I think even that is a bit harsh to robots, because I've seen robots and machines with more personality and are way more interesting than Rey ever was. My biggest question right off the bat is that if they were to succeed actually making this film, what would it even be about? How could you possibly write Rey in any capacity to be a memorable or fun or compelling character? I would also ask what's even the point of making this film, but all of us know that the reason they're making this film is because of money and milking Star Wars to death, because they know fanboys will eat this shit up. Believe it or not, I've heard rumors online, according to some sources, you could probably find that the Rey Star Wars movie is going to take place after the sequel trilogy, but that may even be worse, actually, than a movie about her backstory, due to having even less resources available to come up with ideas to tell a story. Nothing is really confirmed yet, so there's no way to really pick anything further apart, but the concept of making a Rey movie to begin with already makes my spine shiver, so who really gives a shit? The reason I'm making this video, however, is because I can't stress to you enough to not see this movie. Watching paint dry for 48 hours straight is actually a better use of your time than seeing this abomination. If this is seriously a movie that is being made, then I truly hope without any hesitation that it gets canned and never released. This movie should definitely not exist at all. And it is a scam to continue selling the demonic fetus abortion sequel trilogy that only wears the skin and clothes of Star Wars, but is more like a filthy Reddit mod in disguise. If you can gather one thing from this video, it's to really make sure that you don't ever go to the theaters to watch this film, especially when you consider everything that's wrong with the Star Wars sequels to begin with. And to be honest with you, I don't even understand why they would even make a movie about Rey. All it's likely going to be is just filler content that just doesn't amount to anything and feels like it could just be removed from Star Wars entirely and nothing would change. The second I heard about this film at first, I automatically got the feeling that they were just doing more to push Rey down our throats when nobody cares about her story, her character arc that doesn't even really exist, or anything about her. This movie project should just be scrapped and lit on fire in the middle of a huge oil rig and never see the light of day. It's so sad to see that Star Wars still hasn't grown the fuck up yet, and while Andor was certainly a million times better than the Star Wars sequels, I still didn't think it actually was well written enough to be on par with the original trilogy. That may be a slightly hot take, but one thing the original trilogy did well that Andor kind of lacked with was having more entertaining characters. But that's a topic for another day. Andor, I certainly think, tried, but I don't think it was enough, though, to save Star Wars from living in the gutter. All the Rey movie shows me is that Star Wars is creatively bankrupt, and it continues to be in the hands of corporate lizards that have no imagination, passion, or soul in anything they want to build or write or create. The fact that this movie alone is about Rey, of all characters, should automatically tell you how little creativity and thought was put into the concept of this film, and is a huge representation, along with the sequel trilogy, of literally everything wrong with modern Hollywood. Please let me know what your take is of the Rey movie down below. I always love having fun discussions about this stuff. Please like and subscribe for more awesome content, and see you in the next video.